All right, today we start something new. We're going to start working with Adobe Illustrator. And the first thing I want to do here is just show you how our work is going to be different. It's going to look different. So I'm going to go straight to Illustrator and just show you some examples of things. You're going to do stuff like this eventually. Here's one. It's an advertisement for an ice cream store, and look at this. It's a little green monster. I made it. And look, it's a panda. Isn't it cute? I made that. It's K2SO, and I made that. And it's a soccer shirt, not brand new, 2016, right? I made all of it except for actually for the soccer ball. More about that later. And then you've probably seen these before, haven't you? Haven't you seen those before? A little logo design going on there. I made those as well. So you can see how the things that we produce in Adobe Illustrator are going to look different than the things that we produced in Photoshop. The projects will be different and the outcome will be different. Now I do want to show you something about the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator. If I go back to Photoshop for a minute, this is my monster that we did in the monster project, right? And if I zoom in, if I do Control plus and I zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, come on, let's go here. Let's zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. And I want to zoom in like on the octopus tentacle that's over here. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. All right. So I got zoomed way in close on the octopus tentacle, and you can see some of the stars in the background as well. And you can see that this is made of what's called pixels. Every one of those little squares that are slightly different colors, those are called pixels. You've probably heard that before. You've probably seen pixel art before. But a photograph is made up of pixels, and Photoshop is primarily a pixel-based editor. It works more with pixels than anything else. Now, it can do some other things, but what we've been doing so far has all been what's called pixel-based editing. And if you zoom in on an image in Photoshop close enough, you see the individual pixels of color that make the picture. All right, so I'm going to Control minus zoom back out, and I'm going to switch over to Illustrator, and I'll use this little green monster as an example. All right, so we're going to Control plus zoom in on little green monster here, and the thing that I want you to look for is, do you see any pixels on little green monster? I'll zoom in, that's right down his back and his fin that's kind of sticking out, the spines that stick out the back. And you know, the answer is obviously no, you don't, and you never will. Illustrator is what's called a vector-based editor, not a pixel-based editor. And I don't know if anybody even cares about that. But now you know, right? You heard it here. We're going to be working in vector art rather than pixel-based art, and it is different. Okay. So now I want to turn our attention to what is our first project going to be? What am I going to have you do first with Adobe Illustrator? Well, for that, I'm going to hop back here to the internet, and on Google Classroom, you will have this handout posted, and it describes the project. Really, this first project is it's kind of like playing with blocks when you were a kid. Here is how it works. It's building with shapes, and it's worth 50 points. I've provided what's called an artboard. You'll get used to that term. In Illustrator, you have an artboard that you work on. You put all your stuff on that artboard. So I've provided an artboard that you're going to download. It's called Build with Shapes, and you'll get that from Google Classroom. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. There's a bunch of shapes on it, and you're going to use those to make something. Now, what am I supposed to make, Mr. Arvin? It's up to you. I'm going to show you some examples in a few minutes, but it's up to you. Make your final design fit on the artboard. Don't have things hanging off the edge. If you have extra shapes that you did not use, get rid of them at the end. Don't get rid of them too soon. And I've got more details and requirements below. Now, I do want you to know how this is going to be graded. And I'm going to make this make more sense here in a minute. In your final design, if you used less than 15 parts, then that gets you a 30 out of 50, and that's a D minus, and oh, come on, you can do better than that. In your final design, if you use 15, 16, 17, 18, or 19 parts, you're up to 35 out of 50. That's kind of a C minus. In your final design, if you use 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, then you're up to a 40 out of 50. You're getting better. That's a B minus. But if you use 25 or more parts in your final design, 50 out of 50, A+. And if this whole idea of parts, using a certain number of parts, if that confuses you, what you need to do is keep watching, because I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Every shape you use counts, and you don't have to use all of the shapes that are provided on the artboard. Saving your work works pretty much like it does in Photoshop. File and save as. Browse to a location that you want, your documents folder, your downloads folder, your network drive, wherever, and save your work. Give it a file name and save your work. And there is going to be an Illustrator options box that pops up when you save, and you have to make sure you click OK on that. Now, on the second page of this handout, I have a bunch of tips about things that will help you on this assignment, like resizing a shape, changing the color of a shape, rotating a shape, making duplicates. They're all like documented for you right here. I'm not going to read that because, you guessed it, I am going to be over in Illustrator here, and I'm going to show it to you. All right. Now, if you're looking at your Creative Cloud app, Illustrator, you can fire up Illustrator just like we did Photoshop. There's just a button for it, right? Here's Illustrator right here, and there's an open button. So if you have your Creative Cloud app, your desktop app open, you can just click open on Illustrator, and it should fire up and get going. And I've already got it running over here because I had all of these examples opened up. So what I'm going to do here is get rid of. I'm going to close a bunch of stuff here. All right. So that's here you have what Illustrator is kind of going to look like when you open it up. Now, where are you going to get that artboard? All right. Well, here we go. This is not. I'm not using the official assignment link, but it's going to work like this. So on week 7 for Monday, it's going to say something like Illustrator #1, build with shape, something like this. This is just an example. So I'm going to click there, and there's going to be this thing. It says Illustrator #1, build with shapes. It's going to say, just ignore this. It says PostScript, ignore it. So click that, and you're not going to see anything. Don't get scared when you look at that box and it's like, it's just empty. Don't worry about it. Now, just like Photoshop, we have to come way over in the top right-hand side, hit the little 3-dot menu for more actions, and go to Open in New Window. And then, once again, it's going to look like there's nothing there, but you just download it. It's the same thing we did with Photoshop, right? Open a new window and download, and it should go into your Downloads folder when you do that. All right, so now I'm going to go back over to Illustrator, and I'm going to click this Open button over on the left-hand side, and I'm going to look in my Downloads folder, and I found this Build with Shapes thing, and I'll open it up, and bingo, there it is. All right, so here's what you've got, right? These are your building blocks. You have to make something out of what you see here. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you some tips that are going to help. I believe. I really think they will. All right. So the first thing is the tool that you're really going to need to do this assignment. Over on the left-hand side, there's a toolbar, and there's going to be a black arrow, and that's the one you're really going to need. You pretty much won't use any other tools, I don't think. But the black arrow is the one you need, not the white arrow, the black arrow. All right. So if you have that tool activated, by the way, the keyboard shortcut for that black arrow is the letter V, V as in victory, V as in valley. So you can just, if you have that active, you can just drag things around. Like, see, I went and grabbed the star here, and I can just put it anywhere I want. So just moving things around, you can just select things and drag it around. Now, resizing works like this. If you float your mouse over one of these handles that's on the bounding box, you don't have to hit Control-T. You know how on Photoshop you have to hit Control-T for transform? Don't have to do that on Illustrator. You select an object, there's a bounding box around it. Bounding box has handles. You just drag that handle, and bingo, there you go. You can make them bigger, smaller, whatever you want. Now here's a little tip here. If you hold the Shift key, I'm going to do Control-Z to undo that. And by the way, Control-Z works in Illustrator just like it does in Photoshop. Control-Z is undo. If you hold the Shift key down when you size it, you lock the proportions. Right? If I don't hold the Shift key, and maybe for this, the square would be a better one to use, right? If I hold the shift key, it's always going to stay a square. It's just going to be a bigger square or a smaller square, but I'll hold the shift key down while I'm dragging the handle, and it stays square. But if I let go of the shift key, I can make it into a rectangle, or I can do all kinds of stuff with it if I'm not holding the shift key. So if you want to lock the proportions of a shape, hold down the shift key while you're dragging it, and that will keep the width and height proportion locked in as they were. So that's just a tip. All right, rotating a shape. What if you have a shape but you don't want it, you want to rotate it around? If you have your black arrow and you kind of sneak up on a corner handle, or really I think on any handle, it doesn't have to be a corner handle, but if you sneak up on a handle, you'll see the pointer turn to a little curved arrow. Can you see that? Can you see that, right? And when it's showing that little curved arrow, if you click your mouse and then just move your mouse, you can rotate it around. Now there is, I will say, I'm going to Control Z undo that. There is, if you tap the letter R on your keyboard, R, like a pirate, that activates what's called the rotate tool, and then you can also do the same thing. You can just click your mouse and it'll rotate around that anchor point there. And then when you're ready to go back to the black arrow, you just tap the letter V on your keyboard, R and V, and those are keyboard shortcuts. All right, so you can rotate things. All right, so let's say you're making something and you have a star, but you want more than one star. Okay, well here's what I feel like is the easiest way to do that. Somebody's going to think, well, just copy it and paste it, and that works, but you can do this. If you press down the Alt key on the keyboard, use your black arrow, hold down the Alt key, press it and hold it, and then drag the shape. And bingo, it made a duplicate, right? So you press and hold the Alt key, drag the shape, and I could make as many of those as I wish. Hold the Alt key, drag the shape, and you can make all the duplicates you want, right? And if you ever wind up making, oh man, I made too many, I don't need that many, just select it with your black arrow and either hit the delete key on the keyboard, or I think the backspace key on the keyboard will do it as well. You can get rid of stuff if you need to get rid of stuff. All right, let's talk about color. If I select a shape, then way over here on the right hand side, and I'm gonna rearrange some things here for a second, so just hang with me here. All right. This is mostly because I'm making a movie. If you select a shape, way over here on the right hand side, there's an appearance panel. It's over on the properties area, and there's like this appearance panel, and it says, you see fill and stroke, right? Now, we're going to talk a lot more about color later, but for right now, maybe we can just get by with this collection of colors we have here. Or, you could try this guy over here if you want to, the color mixer. But there's some swatches right here. And if I select that star and I just go to this fill box and then I say, okay, boom, and now it's orange, right? Now, what about the stroke? Okay, well, the stroke, if I click on this little frame thing right next to stroke, I can change the color of the stroke. I could give it, let's say I give it a green stroke, the stroke is the outline. And then right next to the word stroke, to the right of it, right now it says 4-point. I can bump that up, and I've got it up to like 15 now, 15, 16. And if you look at the star, it's got a very thick outline, right? And you can make that really thick, or you can hit the little down arrow, or there's also a drop down menu here. But you can hit the up arrow, down arrow, and make a thin outline, or if you keep hitting the down arrow far enough, it will disappear. And look, see, anytime you see a red slash, like you see here, that means there's no stroke. It's a stroke of 0. You don't have a stroke. Medically, that's good, but in graphic design, you might want a stroke, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and give that like a 6-point green stroke, and you see the idea there, right? You can change the fill and the stroke and the thickness of the stroke. All right, so let's look at something else. Let's see what would happen. I'm going to bring this circle over here and drop it like that. All right, and let me just, for kicks and giggles, I'm going to select that circle and change it to a red circle. Okay, so you see how when I brought the circle over, I went and grabbed it. It was sitting next to the artboard, and I got it with the black arrow, and I brought it over and I dropped it on. And look at how that circle is tucking in behind the star. Right, you see that? Okay. Well, maybe that's the way you want it, maybe you don't. There are certain situations where you're trying to make something, And you're thinking, well, I don't want that to be behind. And actually, here's what happens a lot of times. People will come in, they'll drag something over and drop it right here, and then they'll say, it's gone. I lost it. You didn't lose it. It's behind there, right? That's the problem. The circle was behind the star. It's not lost. It's just underneath. All right, so what if you want to solve that problem? What if you want to change that situation? Well, there's actually a couple of ways you can do it. You can, if you right-click on the circle and go to Arrange, there's options. Now, another way, and you're going to discover a lot of stuff with this program because people are going to look at, what's transform? And they're going to find things, right, that you're going to understand. You're going to figure them out. But also when it comes to this whole like moving in front, moving behind, if I select the circle and I go over to this properties panel that's over on the right hand side, it'll be over on the right hand side, and it has several features over here. One of them in these quick actions says arrange, and I can say, well, let's bring that to the front. And now you see that the red circle is in front of the orange star, and it could sit like right there. It just depends on what you're trying to make. Sometimes you want to tuck something behind, and sometimes you want something in front. And it's just stacking order is all it is. And if I wanted to take that circle back, behind that orange star, I could select it and say arrange and say we could send it to the back, right? And now it tucked behind. All right, good. There we go, stacking order. You can, of course, zoom in on your work if you want to, and that's done the same way as Photoshop. Control plus will zoom in, okay? Control minus will zoom out, okay? And if you're zoomed in on your artboard and on your work and you want to move the artboard around and you don't want to zoom back out to do it, just press and hold the space bar and you can scoot the artboard around however you want to, and then I'm using my mouse. I have one finger on the space bar and I'm using my mouse to move the artboard. Then when you got it the way you want, you just let go of the space bar, let go of the mouse, bingo, there we go. All right, so press and hold the space bar, and that scoots the thing around so you can see what you want to see. All right, so I'm going to zoom this back out. And now what I want to get, I'm coming down the home stretch here. So, your job becomes, okay, you got to take these shapes and play around with their position and their size and their color and duplicating them and rotating them and use some imagination, and you got to make something. And you just and you're kind of limited to what you have here. I want you to just use what's here. You see, this isn't really about, well, I'm going to go over here on the tool panel and get a bunch of other stuff. No. This is about make something out of what you got. All right? Use what I showed you. Duplicate things if you want to. Move things around. Make things bigger. Make things smaller. Stack them in a different order. And see what you can do. Now, just to show you a few things, a few examples, I am going to, and this will take a couple of clicks here because I have to dig into some folders here to show you these things that I want to show you. My goodness, I got a mess there. Oh, that's better. All right. And we're going to Illustrator, and we're going to project number 1. And let's go here. I think it's coming. There we go. All right. So here I started off, to make this bug, I started off with the exact same set of shapes as what you see right here. And I made this bug. Okay. Now I want to tell you a little bit about grading while I've got this one in front of you here. I said that to get an A+, you have to use at least 25 parts. Right? 25 pieces, 25 parts. So here's what I'm going to do when I grade your work. You turn in whatever it is you make. And see how it's on the artboard, right? It fits on the artboard. The artboard is the white thing. All right, so it's on the artboard. And I'm going to come along here and say, okay, that's 1 piece or part. That's 2 parts. That's 3 parts. That's 4 parts. That's 5 parts. That's 6 parts. That's 7 parts. That's 8 parts. You get the idea? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You get the idea, right? See what I mean? Everything you use counts. I used a whole bunch of circles. I duplicated. I did alt drag on a whole bunch of circles, but they all count. Did I use any stars on this bug? No. You don't have to use every shape that is available, but to get the 50 out of 50 A+, you have to think enough to make something that has at least 25 pieces involved. All right. Now I'm going to do some Control Z's and put my little dude back together there. Okay, he's back together. And let me show you a couple other quick examples. Just, I want you to think a little bit here, right? Here's another one. Now, the same exact set of shapes, right? I started with the same exact set of shapes, and I made this one. And if I start tearing it apart, there's one piece, and there's two, and there's three, and there's 4, and 5, and 6. And you can see where I duplicated a bunch of things. And every one of these stitches counts, right? Every one of those stitches counts. And these rectangles were duplicated, and I played with stroke colors, and so you see all the parts kind of coming together here. And I've got that because of the stitches mostly. I definitely have 25 pieces on that. Definitely have 25 pieces. All right. So what I wanted to see, that is a completely different thing from what I showed you a moment ago with the bug. Now I got one more thing I'm going to show you with an example here. And then we're going to, it's going to be off you go, right? Here's another one that I made. All right. Oh, dear. Actually, the thing I wanted to show you isn't on here, but, oh, well. Here's another one, but here, I can tell you about it. Here's another one that I made, and you notice once again that I didn't use any stars on this. No stars, right? What happened to the stars? Well, any of the leftover pieces, if you have leftover pieces sitting around the artboard when you're done, you can just click on them and touch delete on the keyboard and get rid of them. But make sure you're done first. Make sure you've created whatever it is you're going to create. So in my demo examples here, I did a bug and a Frankenstein monster and a rocket. And I made them, I'm telling you what, I made them out of the same exact shapes as what I gave you. So you just have to, use a little imagination and think about how can I make these fit together, and how can I stack them in the order that I want, and how can I move them around and duplicate them and get them to be the thing I want them to be. And that's what this assignment is about. It's about using shapes to make something that you dream up. Okay. Now, another other little bit of news. This is going to be, I want you to get started on this today. And like I said, when you're saving, you go File and you go Save As. And you pay attention to, are you going to put it in your Downloads folder? Are you going to put it in your Documents folder? Where are you going to save it? Right? Pay attention to that because it's important. And then, like if I'm going to put this in my Documents folder, I might want to call this Shapes. And stick your name on it or something if you want to. Or you could say Shapes Done. And maybe it's not quite done yet, but you need to name it so that you know when it's time to turn it in, I want you to turn in the right file. All right, now you're going to see this when you go to save it. It's going to pop up with an Illustrator options box. And you need to click OK on that. Don't cancel it. If you cancel it, you didn't save it, right? So you need to click OK on that box to finish the saving process. And like I said, did I say? I want you to get started on this today, and if you don't get it done, save your progress. And it's going to be a 2-class session thing, all right? Because believe it or not, there are a lot of people when we do this assignment that they don't quite get it done the first day. They need a little extra time to put the finishing touches on and wrap it up on the second day. So it is going to be a 2-day thing. If you don't get it done today, you'll have time to finish in the next class period. All right, let's go to work.